What were you thinking with that ad?
Sure. Well, the gentleman who's in the Treasurer's office now has had a lot of ethics issues and issues with cronyism and corruption, and all of them were reported in the newspaper, in the Plain Dealer, and the Dayton Daily News, and the Plain Dealer and the Warren Tribune Chronicle actually editorialized and hitting him pretty hard on it. And so we just took things that were right in the newspaper, pretty much quotes from his office and from the newspaper, and put them on TV.
What about the whole mosque angle and the implication that's there? Do you see that there? Was that what was intended?
Yeah, we don't. No, we don't see that at all. I mean, cronyism is bad no matter what. And just to give you background on what happened, there's a immigration attorney here in Columbus who, out of the blue, got hired to be a lobbyist for one of the largest multinational banks in the country. That bank, coincidentally, probably not coincidentally, received 3 of the 4 largest global custody banking contracts the state has to offer to handle $32 billion worth of state funds. Then the newspapers uncovered that this lobbyist's wife was hired to be the treasurer's executive assistant. The treasurer's office lied about that, and then the treasurer's office was asked by the Plain Dealer, well, how did she get this job? And they said, well, the deputy treasurer explained in the newspaper that it was posted at the mosque here in Columbus, and the newspaper asked, well, where else did you post it? And they said nowhere in the entire state, which sort of begged the question, if there's 11.4 million people who live in the state of Ohio, shouldn't the other 11.4 million have a chance to apply for these jobs? And whether it's at a mosque or a church or a synagogue or a country club, regardless, cronyism is bad. And a hallmark of our campaign, one of the main messages we've had in our campaign, is restoring character and integrity to the Treasurer's office. I also have a concern with some of the hiring practices in the office. Part of my campaign platform is to ensure that the people working in the Treasurer's office who are managing the state's money are qualified financial professionals with character and integrity. With the state at an $8 billion operating budget shortfall and a multi-billion-dollar unfunded liability in the pension funds, I'd argue now, more than ever, we need good, qualified financial professionals with integrity managing the state's hard-earned dollars. And unfortunately, Mr. Boyce decided to hire the sister of the former mayor of Cincinnati, the daughter of the former mayor of Toledo, the son of the state's budget director, whose experience prior to the Treasurer's office was working at a zoo and a water park. And I think it's just sad. It's sort of funny, but really it's more sad given the awful economic situation we're in as a state. And we've been talking all around the state about the importance of putting in the office good qualified financial professionals.
His answer to that was they were qualified. Do you want to address that?
It's just not the case. I mean, over the past 18 months.
Why isn't it the case?
Sure. Well, I think as far as the person in Columbus, for instance, I don't think working at a zoo and a water park qualifies the gentleman to work at the Treasurer's office. And in and of itself, each one of them probably isn't a big deal. But when you look at the pattern of just cronyism and hiring these folks, something just doesn't smell right. Especially the lobbyist gets $32 billion worth of state funds to handle, and then his wife gets hired as the executive assistant to the treasurer. It just doesn't smell right. And the newspapers, to their credit, Plain Dealer and the Warren Tribune Chronicle and Dayton Daily News, have either covered it and or editorialized on it. It's not us; it's the newspapers who are bringing these things up. In addition to that, over the past 18 months, it's not a long time that Mr. Boyce has been in office. The following people have quit: his chief of staff, his campaign manager, his finance director, his communications director, his community outreach director, his community education director, and his executive assistant.
You said they all quit early on in his tenure. Do you want to comment on that?
They've quit, all of them quit, I'd say, within the span of the 18 months. I mean, some of them were as recent as last month, and some of them, happened last year. So some of them early, and some of them as recent as last month. His IT director quit. So.
And do you have a theory as to why they're quitting?
We do. I mean, it's just what we've heard from a lot of them. A lot of those folks have been communicating with our campaign and just explaining to us that they describe the office as an ethics nightmare. I mean, that's the terminology we've heard time and time again, is ethics nightmare, that the office, the way Treasurer Boyce leads the office is just without an ethical compass, and the way they make decisions is based on campaign contributions and
I mean, do you feel you can substantiate that? I mean, you make that allegation by the inference that you're giving. Do you feel that it's substantiated? Do you feel that that's a credible, what they're saying is credible or not credible?
We do. I mean, if it was 1 or 2 people leaving, I think that happens. But to have every single one of your senior staffers leave, and these weren't holdovers from Treasurer Cordray. These were actually folks that Treasurer Boyce hired, and then they left within a year and a half. It's unusual. It's just something just doesn't smell right.
Have these people gone on the record to indicating it was an ethics nightmare?
No, it's interesting. A lot of them have talked behind the scenes with us about that. A lot of them work in Democratic politics, and so what they have gone on the record is saying is that Treasurer Boyce lied to the plain dealer. About 2 weeks ago, we had a plain dealer endorsement interview where Treasurer Boyce looked at a room like this, looked the editors in the eye, and said that none of these people quit. He said all but one of these people were fired. And one of them left on their own accord, and the rest of them were all fired. And then I'm not sure if you all saw the plain dealer article yesterday, and we sent it out today, that the plain dealer, Treasurer Boyce wasn't planning on the plain dealer investigating his claim, and it turns out that all of them left on their own accord. And so to answer your question, all of them have come out in the plain dealer yesterday and said, listen, Kevin Boyce is not telling the truth. We all left on our own accord, none of us were fired. I feel sorry for these folks who are sort of in a pickle. They're sort of publicly being thrown under the bus by the former boss. At the same time, they want to work in Democratic politics, so I understand how they wouldn't want to punch too hard publicly.
But you're on the record that the office is currently an ethics nightmare.
Correct, yeah. We say that everywhere we go because that's what it's been. I mean, the amount of articles and coverage in the newspaper, and a lot of them are here in your packets. It's just unusual. Over 18 months to have that much coverage in the newspaper about contract steering, cronyism in hiring, paying for political items with taxpayer dollars. It's just unusual. It just doesn't pass the smell test. And all those articles are there in your folder. You can read about them. Again, these are not things that we're pushing. These are things that the newspapers are reporting.
If you had it to do over again, would you have mentioned the word mosque in that commercial 3 times?
Well, we think the ad is 100% accurate, and don't think that there's anything inaccurate about it. Again, we're just quoting the newspaper. We're quoting what Amir Ahmad is.
But I mean, given the current political climate
I think it was
surrounding Muslims and Islam, don't you think that's kind of throwing gasoline on the fire unnecessarily?
Well, I think, if I recall correctly, I think it was only one time that it was mentioned in the ad. And I don't think so. I mean, I spent 15 months of my life in Iraq in the Marine Corps, doing things like going on patrol with Muslims, trying to protect them and their families. And with due respect to everyone here, feel that I have lived within Muslim culture and have respect for it, having lived in Iraq for approximately 15 months of my life, serving there as a Marine. By no means is there any intent to do anything like that. We're just taking things that were in the newspaper that Treasurer Boyce and his office said, and just basically taking them out of the newspaper and putting them on a TV commercial.
Even though that wasn't your intention, it seems that there are people in the public who are taking away from this that the implication that Kevin Boyce is a Muslim. That being the case, do you have any intention of pulling that ad just because that may be a misperception that's out there?
Yeah, I don't know why people would have that perception. I mean, I think it's clear from watching it and reading the script that it's the lobbyist and his wife. And again, that I know of, I don't think the word Muslim was ever used in it. It was just taking Mr. Boyce's deputy treasurer, Amir Ahmad, and taking his own quote from the newspaper and putting it in there.
So the ad stands, you're not going to pull it?
Correct.
Okay. Getting back to just the treasurer's office, it's kind of a down ticket office. It's not the sexy office like the governor's office or the U.S. Senate.
Sure.
How do you've been out knocking on people's doors? Do they know what the treasurer's office is, or what have you been telling them to explain to them what you would be doing if you're elected?
Sure. So when I go to people's doors and knock on their doors, for instance, this past Sunday we were in Marietta, down on the river in southeast Ohio, knocking on doors. And what I tell people is I'm 33 years old, born and raised in Ohio. I'm going to spend the rest of my life here. And my wife and I live in Lyndhurst, and we're not going anywhere. And I have a vested interest in turning my community where I live and also the state of Ohio in a different direction. And frankly, feel very strongly that we need new leaders in all levels of public office. The reason I tell people I'm experienced is dating back to when I was a city councilman in Lyndhurst. I served on our city finance committee. On that finance committee, we dealt with a lot of fiscal issues for the city, but also dealt with issues interacting with entities larger than the city as well, and really built a foundation beginning with my service on city council. In 2006, I ran for the State House of Representatives. The district in which I ran is a 2-to-1 Democratic to Republican, and it was a pretty tough year to be on the ballot as a Republican in 2006. And I knocked that year on approximately 19,679 doors, wore out 3 pairs of shoes, and in a district that's 2-to-1 Democrat to Republican, a good chunk of which is represented by the Honorable Dennis Kucinich in Congress. I got elected, and I got elected with a good mix of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And I'll tell you one of my main concerns about what's happening here in Columbus right now and what's happening in Washington is that I think as the citizens of our nation are becoming more and more independent, I think too many people in public office in Washington and Columbus have come to care more about the D or the R next to their name than they do about doing the right thing. And the only way I can get elected was with tens of thousands of Democrats voting for me and hundreds, making donations and putting signs in their front yard. And I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to attract support across party lines. My district, 2-to-1 Democrat to Republican, got elected with 67% and re-elected with 72% in a district that Ted Strickland and Barack Obama handled pretty heavily. And I think it's just an illustration of my ability and my focus on working across party lines. In my first term in the legislature, I served on the House Insurance Committee, where we did the reconstruction of oversight to the Workers' Comp Investment Fund. While serving on that committee, we passed this bill, House Bill 100, which was a bipartisan bill, Democrats and Republicans working together. And this was a response to the unfortunate coin and other investment scandals out of the BWC from the past decade. I also in the State House have now earned my way up to be the ranking member of our Financial Institutions and Securities Committee. On that committee, we deal with all issues under the umbrella of banks, financial services firms, any other type of financial institutions. We're dealing with mortgage issues right now, pension issues, and pretty much anything in that space of finance, be it on the private side or the public side. And in addition to that, I've just spent a lot of time and energy dealing with fiscal issues in the State House. And because of my background with these issues and interest in them, I decided to run for state treasurer. There are certain duties in Section 135 of the Ohio Revised Code that set forth what the treasurer shall do. One of those duties is appointing members to serve on the state pension funds. In the blue packets I gave you is an article from the Associated Press that explains, it's about a week or two this article came out, that for the past 18 months, Treasurer Boyce has failed to appoint someone to the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund. This is one of the main duties of the Treasurer's office. And so when I'm at people's doors, one of the things I talk about is change for the office, is ensuring that I'm following the law and that I'm conducting the fiduciary duties of the office. And I will ensure when I'm in there that I'm appointing members to these funds. Our state pension funds are over $100 billion assets under management. Unfortunately, the Police and Fire Fund is struggling in its economic outlook. And I would argue now more than ever, we need those seats on the pension boards to be filled so there's investment experts making those decisions. And it's unusual, and we haven't really heard an explanation of why Treasurer Boyce has not appointed folks to those funds. The other people who make appointments are the governor, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, and none of them have really had problems making appointments and finding qualified people in the state. So that's one change I'll make in the office. Second change is what I mentioned earlier, ensuring that the people managing the money in the office are qualified financial professionals, not the relatives of lobbyists and friends and political hacks.
Are you a qualified financial